Pigeons. Rats of the sky, the bane to our precious urban landscapes. How dare they poop on our concrete, perch on our statues, eat our trash? These birds are single-wingedly ruining city life all around the world. The audacity. How dare they? What gives them the right? Why haven't we killed them all? Chances are you've probably heard somebody spew anti-pigeon rhetoric that sounds an awful lot like that. Or maybe it's you. Maybe you're the one. Did you ever stop and wonder how we got here? Or if the pigeons are even dirty and disease-ridden to begin with? Or do you just believe everything that you're told? Here's the thing. Pigeons have played a pivotal role throughout human history. So pigeons, also known as rock doves, are part of the Columbidae family. So fossil evidence suggests that their original range was between the Middle East and South Asia. So that includes the Fertile Crescent, or the cradle of early civilization. They ate grains and seeds, so archaeologists speculate that when we started farming, they were like, hell yeah, your farm is my farm, right? Su casa es mi casa. So they would eat our grains and kind of chill around us. POV, you're a farmer in the Fertile Crescent, okay? The pigeon specs are kind of impeccable, okay? And I say that pun intended. Like, think about it. They went out, they fed themselves, and then they came back to the same spot every single night. They produced more birds, they lived in cliffs. It was like an unlimited self-sustaining protein glitch. And they poop. Okay, so self-sustaining protein and fertilizer. 2 birds, 1 bird. So historians estimate that we started keeping them for food about like 5,000 years ago. But just ask your mom, she probably remembers. For all of my book talk girlies, the pigeon does make multiple cameos in the Bible. If somebody couldn't afford like a bigger animal like a lamb to sacrifice, it was okay for them to bring 2 pigeons to sacrifice instead. Soon enough we realized that these pigeons, they know their way around for whatever reason. These guys are crazy. We now know that pigeons rely on things like the position of the sun, the geomagnetic fields of the earth, and olfactory cues to find their way home, which is crazy. I mean, it's amazing that you can just drop this pigeon anywhere and it'll find its way home. Like, that's incredible. So eventually we employed pigeons as our postal service. Carrier pigeons were used over 3,000 years ago in places like ancient Egypt, with the Romans, Persians, the Greeks. In the 8th century BC, Greeks were using pigeons to send the Olympic Games results from town to town. But also, why bother? We all know the Americans won all the gold.
My pronouns are USA.
Genghis Khan used pigeons to create a communication network across his empire in the 12th century. Did you know pigeons were one of the reasons for the French Revolution? So prior to the French Revolution, keeping pigeons was like a hierarchical display of wealth. Sound familiar? It was a right restricted to nobility and clergy and royalty, and it was just a status symbol, really. They would live in these dovecotes, or these structures built for pigeons, and the fancier the dovecote, the higher in status that person was. However, these pigeons, they don't understand property. They would peck at the grain of these peasants, and the peasants weren't allowed to keep pigeons, or hunt them, or kill them, or do anything to the pigeons. So they were like, what the hell, bro? Your fancy-ass bird is eating my grain, and I can't even kill it? So it's cited as one of the reasons for the French Revolution, and after they whipped out the guillotine in 1789, everybody had the right to pigeon. In Victorian England, there was this huge craze around breeding pigeons, and one person who loved their pigeons more than anyone else was Charles Darwin. Sound familiar? Also check it out. Yeah, I got Charles Darwin merch. I keep that motherfucking thing on me. Listen, he loved his pigeons. He studied them to better understand like the principles of evolution and how genetic traits are passed down. It is through his study of pigeons that he was able to formulate his theory of artificial selection, which is the idea that people play an active role in shaping how plants and animals evolve. You know, we shape these specific species to be more attractive or useful to us. With the pigeon fancy, there was such a well-documented history of pigeon breeding. They bred really well in captivity, they reliably produced very fertile offspring, they grew up quite quickly. I mean, it was like dream come true for a freak scientist. Not that he was a freak, I'm sorry, Charles, I don't know why I said that. So they were basically the essential muse for Charles Darwin's Billboard chart-topping #1 hit on the origin of species. After he wrote the first draft of this book and he presented it to his editor, he talked so much about pigeons in the book that the guy was like, bro, this natural selection stuff or artificial selection stuff, boring. It's just a figment of your wild imagination. But the pigeons, that's where the money is. And you know who else loved pigeons? Nikola Tesla. When he lived in New York, he would spend hours feeding pigeons, and he would take injured ones back to his apartment to nurse them back to health. This guy actually fell in love with a particular white dove that visited him often. If you think that's strange, try falling in love with a man, okay? When this dove died, he claimed to have seen this bright white light shine from her eyes, and he said it was brighter than any of the light that he produced from his inventions. And he said that after she died, he felt like his life's work was complete. He said, quote, "I love that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose in my life." Potential bestiality implications aside, what's really notable is that he was a notorious germaphobe. So his friends were like, that's so weird, he's a germaphobe, why would he fall in love with a pigeon? Forget about the fact that he fell in love with a bird. They're like, yeah, we all knew that he liked his women to have avian qualities and a, feathery complexion, but a pigeon? He usually likes the clean girl aesthetic. How could he like a pigeon? That's so not his type. Also, you know who else loves pigeons? Little Miss Emma Chamberlain. Hot girls love pigeons. I'm telling you. Sorry. I just wanted to peck. Feeling peckish. Sorry, I had to do that. I mean, pigeons continued to be used as an emergency message system in World War I and World War II. So very recently, like well into the 20th century, which I don't know if you're familiar with what century we're in, but we're in the 21st century. So that was last century, bro. The thing is, with pigeons, they can only go one way. So you need multiple pigeons for correspondence. In World War I, as many as 500,000 homing pigeons accompanied soldiers and sailors. They delivered distress messages that saved lives. At the time, they did have like radio and some telephone technology, I believe, but that stuff could malfunction easily. So it was just easier and more reliable to use a pigeon. So they were mostly used for like espionage and emergency messages like, do you like me or do you just like me? In his 1928 volume, Pigeons in the Great War, Osmond described the carrier pigeon services as, quote, practically infallible, and gave it an unsubstantiated success rate of about 95 to 99%. Some pigeons are war heroes. You think these guys were dodging the draft because of bone spurs? No! There's just one pigeon in particular. Cher ami? I don't know. I don't speak Italian. So this pigeon had already helped deliver messages for the French forces in the Battle of Verdun, but in October 1918, it accompanied America's 77th Infantry Division. So they were attacking this heavily fortified German defense line. They had 554 soldiers. They went too far, they started to get bombarded by friendly fire and enemy fire. See, none of this would have happened if they just had one more soldier, because then it would have been 555. Angel numbers. Hello? See, they had one pigeon left. So they frantically scribbled down this message, they tied it to its little leg in a canister, and they sent the pigeon off. Shortly after they released the pigeon, Germans shoot it down, because of course. So the pigeon struggled a little bit, but it got back in the sky. Because they don't fuck around, bro. Flew 25 miles back to the American base and delivered the message. It was blinded in one eye, had a deep wound across its chest, and the canister was dangling from what was left of its leg. Sounds painful, but have you ever been kicked in the balls? 194 lives were saved because of this pigeon. Became a war hero, it was awarded the highest military honor. John J. Pershing, the commander of the American Expeditionary Force, said, quote, there isn't anything the U.S. can do too much for this bird. Then the bird was like, hey, can I get some universal health care? And they shot it. When you think about the fact that we used to love them, we had this reverence for pigeons, we had a lot of use for them. So what happened? So in the early decades of the 1900s, city dwellers were eating pigeons. If you wanted to cosplay the trad wife life, if you wanted to channel your inner Nora Smith, your inner ballerina farm, and you wanted to kill an animal that you had in your backyard and then eat it for dinner, then you would have pigeons, because you could have the pigeon cote on the roof. So originally, it was kind of like a fancy delicacy. After the Great Depression, prices for pigeon tanked, and it became like the common man's cuisine. Fuck, do you guys remember kids' cuisine? Oh my god. So over the years, some of the pigeons would escape from these dovecotes. They started forming these like feral pigeon societies on the streets. They would roam the streets, they would snap, they would do musicals, like you know the drill. It's just like you've seen West Side Story. The more common that these, feral pigeon societies became, the more annoyed people became. So by the end of World War II, the pigeons just weren't so useful anymore. Animal husbandry was kind of going out of style, and a new bombshell poultry entered the villa. Chicken. Ever heard of it? The thing with chicken is that they're fatter, they're flightless, they're kind of built for a life of straight chilling, okay? Whereas a pigeon, it's an endurance athlete, so the meat of a chicken is probably gonna be a lot more tender and like tastier. In poultry capitalism, you're going for size and scale. So of course you're gonna pick a big, fat, juicy chicken rather than a hot, sexy pigeon. Fuck, I sound like Nikola Tesla. So in the 1940s, people were just getting so fed up, so they started putting out like don't feed pigeon signs, and they started putting out poisons for them. In 1961, they were declared a public health menace in the New York Times, baselessly. And then there was a meningitis outbreak in the 60s, which was blamed on the pigeons. It's just bad PR. See, all of this could have been avoided if they just had a PR rep. On June 22nd, 1966, the dreaded term rats with wings was coined by Parks Commissioner Thomas Hoving, and on the second longest day of the year, no less. I mean, it's crazy though, when you look at the articles from like the late 1800s, where people are basically calling pigeon hunters or people who kill pigeons murderers, to this. Before pigeons, people really hated sparrows, okay? Because the sparrows would eat horse feed, and before horses were replaced by cars in the 1920s in the big cities, the sparrows were everywhere, right? And then we stopped riding our horsies around the streets. So when there wasn't as much horse feed around, I mean, what the sparrows aren't gonna eat the gasoline from the cars, hello. The numbers kind of fluctuated and people forgot about them. And then we had this gaping hole where our prior avian creature that we hated the most once was. It is so important to note that pigeons are feral, okay? Meaning that they are domesticated animals that are wild. These pigeons on the streets of New York or of any city, they are descendants of the pigeons that our ancestors once really loved. Imagine like 50 years from now, we all just decide one day, actually dogs and cats, filthy, disgusting, get them out of our house. We have no use for them anymore. They're not good for companionship. Now we have chatbots, we have AI. AI replaces the jobs of cats and dogs, okay? So now, in the streets of Chicago, New York, Tupelo, Timbuktu, all of these big cities have a crazy population of feral dogs and cats, right? And everybody has this hatred for these dogs and cats. It is the same exact thing that happened with pigeons, okay? You can say, no, it's different, but it's the same fucking thing. Because of all of our selective breeding over thousands of years, pigeons are extremely comfortable being around us. They were bred to be comfortable being around us and being handled by us. And then we bitch and moan about having to lay in the bed that we made. And then we say shit, we spread propaganda about how they're filthy and they spread disease. But is that even true? Are pigeons really disease-ridden? Can you name, right now, off the top of your head, can you name a disease that is spread by feral pigeons without Googling it? Do you know anybody who has been infected by a pigeon? If yes, then do you want a medal or a chest to pin it on? And if no, think about it. We have been living with pigeons for thousands of years. You would think that there would be a well-documented history of pigeons infecting people if that was really the case, if they were really that disease-ridden. So where's the proof? Where are the facts? Ultimately, there is extremely little evidence to suggest that they are a threat to public health. It is simply misinformation that is then exploited by the pest control industry. They want you to think that the pigeons are filthy and dirty because where there's a problem, there's a solution that you can sell to people. Capitalism 101, bitch. Oh, hello, my beau. Contrary to popular belief, they are not fundamentally toxic to humans. They do carry this disease called psittacosis. That's in their poop, though. To be infected by this, you would have to be living in pigeon shit, a house made of pigeon shit. There's a possibility that, okay, let's say pigeons create this giant behemoth mound of shit outside of a hospital. That shit dries up. The wind blows particles from this mound of shit into the face of somebody who's autoimmune. Okay, maybe they're gonna get sick, but it's so rare. The thing is, cows, pigs, chickens, dogs, cats, they can all transmit diseases to people, okay? The risk is pretty much the same. It's just because we have a fondness for dogs and cats, this risk doesn't seem that threatening to us. But because so many people hate pigeons, of course we're gonna inflate this risk in our mind. Whenever we invite an animal to live near us, to obtain something from it, we are embracing the risk of catching a disease, however rare that might be. And another claim people love to make is that, oh, their poop, it damages buildings. Okay, listen, pigeons can poop anywhere from 9 to 25 pounds a year. Yes, that's highly variable, but their diet is extreme. I mean, like, what the fuck? One day they're eating French fries, the next day they're eating dirt. Like, they only have one all-purpose, everything goes hole called the cloaca, okay? That's where eggs, sperm, shit, everything. Anything that can come out of a pigeon comes out through that hole. Very economical, albeit a little bit uckies. They have uric acid in their poop, which is the chemical found in urine, okay? It's slightly acidic. Some of the historical buildings, they're built out of sandstone or limestone. They do degrade when something acidic hits them. So their poop can have a slightly acidic pH of 5 to a slightly basic pH of 7.4, okay? As an acid, pigeon poo isn't much worse than acid rain. It could leave a tiny little stain, but it's pretty much like, it's very minor. It's not worth all this hullabaloo. But again, where there's a problem, there's a solution that you can sell. They'll sell these things, like they'll sell spikes, they'll sell these nets, they'll sell just all these fucking mods you can put on your building to prevent pigeons from landing there. But they look so hideous. Is it really that big of a deal if you just see a pigeon sitting there? God, fuck. Or just if they, oh my God, God forbid it shits. God forbid an organism shits. Historically, whenever we wanted to control pigeon populations, we would kill them or cull them, but that doesn't do much. In 1961, Basel, Switzerland, they began culling the population of 20,000 pigeons. They depleted flocks by 80%, only to watch them return in greater numbers within weeks. This went on for 25 years until finally they were like, okay, fine, you win. And guess how many pigeons were left? 20,000. The best way to combat the pigeon population would be to just stop feeding them. But then you have people who are homeless, you have people who are, widowed or divorced or just alone, or they're outcasts, and they love to feed pigeons. Or if they're just fucking empathetic. Or if they just like animals. They like to feed pigeons. Because why wouldn't you? It's a bird. It's a bird in a city. Oh my God. It is like a... Sorry. I just think it's ridiculous. Like, I think it's a ridiculous thing to get mad at. And I get so mad that people get so mad over pigeons. And now I look stupid because I'm mad that you look stupid getting mad over pigeons. It's just a fucking... Please. Like, I'm not expecting you to go make out with a pigeon on Nikola Tesla style. I'm just asking you to be at least indifferent or empathetic or sympathetic to the plight of pigeons. I believe, personally, that we owe something to this animal. Our species, our ancestors are the reason why this pigeon is in this conundrum. I don't know why I'm so Italian. Mamma mia. The pigeons. They are incredible creatures, okay? They mate for life, they're extremely loyal to their partner, they can recognize their mate within a large flock even after being separated for long periods of time. They are highly trainable. They are one of the 10 animals that can recognize themselves in a mirror. In a study of pigeon brain power, the birds were trained in over 300 four-letter words and tested for recognition. Some pigeons were able to recognize dozens of words. They were able to distinguish them from gibberish and the correct and incorrect spelling. Some of you fuckers can't even do that. Pigeons probably know the difference between there, and there, better than some of you. They can also tell the difference between Picasso and Monet paintings. There was a 1990 German study where pigeons were trained to memorize 725 black and white visual patterns, okay? And these patterns didn't have any systematic characteristics, okay? So they had to memorize these one by one. They did it easy peasy lemon squeezy. And then they were like, can I have the lemon that you just squeezed? Also, they feed their babies milk. Like, that's crazy. Both male and female pigeons are able to produce milk in this area of the digestive system called their crop. It has protein and fats and it boosts the immune system. Speaking from personal experience, Colin Jerelmack wrote about, quote, the imaginative geography of cities, where we have this sense that there's a border that separates civilization from nature, right? And we get mad when something from nature crosses over into civilization when we didn't invite it. We try to invite nature in to our cities in these tiny little controlled spaces. We get so mad when grass begins to grow through the cracks or weeds grow and we didn't plant the weeds there. This is why we get so mad with pigeons, because we really think deep down they shouldn't be here. They don't belong here. This is our city. This is our habitat. Nature does not respect property. The idea that I owned this land, nothing else can come here. Do you think the animal gives a flying fuck if it's your grain or somebody else's? No. It's gonna eat it. I was listening to the book Pests. I forget the author. We buy technology with the knowing that one day we will replace it. We kind of buy it with the acceptance that it will be obsolete one day. Once we don't have a use for it or we get a better system, we can just throw away this technology. The thing is, now that we've trained pigeons over thousands of years to behave how we want them to behave, it's just amazing how quickly we forgot about everything that pigeons have done for us. The author also talks about how before we had houses or, land that we owned, animals were just competition. Like you'd be in the wild, you'd be picking berries, a bird would pick a berry in front of you and you'd be like, bro, I was going for that berry. But then once we started building these human-centric places, we altered the environments around us, we want to exclude everything that we deem burdensome. We are consistently defending ourselves from nature. Pests don't directly harm us. They harm our things. Up until the Industrial Revolution, pests were just a fact of life. Like, vulnerability was just normal to us and it was expected. As technology evolved and we were able to get more and more comfortable, we have almost entirely severed ourselves from the land from which we came. Technology has given us so much control over our everyday environment and has given us so much comfort. So we get so mad when pigeons pollute our human habitat, and we just spread lies about an animal that pollutes our urban landscape. Which, fair. Ugh, how rude of an organism to evolve in such a way where it pollutes the habitat of another organism. Could you imagine? We shouldn't be so mad that pigeons have adapted to live in our urban environments. I feel like, if anything, that is all the more reason to love pigeons, because we can see ourselves in that quality, because human beings are so adaptable, so are pigeons. Isn't that something we just have in common? The way they love each other and they care for their young and their mates, that is beautiful. And I think that we should appreciate pigeons more, okay? The thing is, I have no solution. I don't know where to go from here. I just ask that you have a little bit more sympathy towards pigeons. If you hate pigeons still, unless a pigeon broke into your house in the middle of the night, beat you senseless, beat the living shit out of you, before proceeding to have sex with your significant other right in front of you, you have no reason to hate pigeons. Pigeons. You have no reason to hate pigeons. You need to get a hobby, because, and I see. Yeah, I heard me say that. You know, fuck. If you still, after all this, hate pigeons viscerally, fuck, I'm forced to wish you peace and love, because in today's political environment, I think that we all need to start reaching out to each other. I understand that there are so many issues that are so much more important. I think you should redirect your anger that you feel towards pigeons towards any of the multitude of injustices going on in the world, okay? The world moves so fast. The news cycle moves faster. I just hope that you can maybe appreciate them a little bit more. Just fucking respect them. How hard is it to respect them? Seriously. Appreciate the pigeons. Okay, now blow me one. Thank you very much. I will see myself out. Bye.